The haves and have-nots in a school lunchroom is not a necessary thing. They just feed our children.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz emphatically defended the state's decision to provide free school lunches and meals to all K through 12 students. And while he did so, he also took a jab at the GOP, who believe that there should have been some means testing instead of having a universal policy that impacts every single student, regardless of income. Let's watch.
Yeah, isn't that rich? Our Republican colleagues were concerned there would be a tax cut for the wealthiest. You can't make some of this up if you tried. The fact of the matter is that the programs of getting food get to our children as easily as possible has always been a priority. We know there's a lot of families that this is hard. They send you tons of paperwork. You're struggling. You're doing work. You're doing all that. This was meant to make it as easy as possible, knowing that it's benefit for all of them. The haves and have-nots in a school lunchroom is not a necessary thing. They just feed our children. And so I'm really excited about that.
So in case it's hard to understand what he means in regard to Republicans, it's funny that Republicans are all of a sudden concerned about, benefits for the wealthy. It's because some Minnesota Republicans pushed for income-based restrictions on eligibility for free school meals, claiming that it doesn't make sense to provide no-cost meals to students whose families can afford to pay, right? And look, I think that the argument that Walz made is a really good one, because when you do means testing, there are costs associated with that as well, administrative costs, right? You have to have some sort of enforcement mechanism in place, some sort of analysis mechanism in place to do the means testing in question, and that is a waste, a drain on the state's resources.
Yeah, sometimes the process costs more than the program itself, so it's not worth it on that grounds. And second of all, any program that gives to everyone is much more likely to survive than one that leaves out the rich. It's almost like a trick to leave out the rich, because if you leave out the rich, eventually they give enough donations to politicians that they kill the program.
Right, people grow resentful when their tax dollars are funding programs that they don't get to benefit from.
That's why Social Security and Medicare are invincible, because they don't leave anyone out. And that's why even the rich are like, no, I don't mind that one, okay? Although the mega rich are against it because they don't give a damn about the Social Security and Medicare. It's nothing to them, right?
Right.
So that's why they still make the program more popular. And by the way, yes, some folks don't need it, and some folks like to make a healthier lunch, etc. Like I've said on previous programs, I hope they've got a good program to give that to the leftovers to homeless and food shelters and soup kitchens, etc. But I have a fun prediction about Tim Walz in a minute after Anna tells you the rest of the story.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to just quickly bring up is when it comes to those living in extreme poverty, it's also a big pain to have to apply and get approved for things, right?
Yeah, and it greatly limits the number of people who'll do it.
Exactly.
Plus then there's the issue of the stigma. Okay, they're getting a school lunch, that means they're poor. Whereas now anybody can get a poor lunch and nobody knows what class they're in, right?
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk a little bit about what food insecurity looks like in the state of Minnesota. An estimated 1 in 6 children in Minnesota don't get enough to eat on a regular basis, but 1 in 4 food insecure kids live in households that don't even qualify for a federal free and reduced meal program, leading to mounting school lunch debts in the tens of thousands of dollars. And that's according to a report by the Minnesota Public Radio. And yeah, I mean, like none of this surprises me. I mean, when you think about the social programs in the country that are means tested, think about how poor someone has to be to qualify for those programs, right? There are plenty of people who are living in poverty, but allegedly make just a little too much money to qualify for any aid. That is a big problem. And so that point I think is perfectly laid out in the graphic we just read you. And by the way, this did not stop Republicans in the state of Minnesota from making some pretty absurd claims. Here's what I mean.
Mr. President, I have yet to meet a person in Minnesota that is hungry. Yet today. I have yet to meet a person in Minnesota that says they don't have access to enough food to eat. Now, I should say that hunger is a relative term, Mr. President. I had a cereal bar for breakfast. I guess I'm hungry now.
I mean, all of my rich friends are totally fine. They're satiated. They don't need anything. They don't need free lunches. No, but like your personal, look, this is why I kind of lose my mind when people base reality on their personal lived experience. Your personal lived experience doesn't necessarily indicate that you're living in reality or experiencing reality. You live in a bubble, bro. You're a state lawmaker. By the way, that's Minnesota State Senator Steve Drakowski.
Yeah, so this reminds me of when Rush Limbaugh said, well, if people are hungry, why don't they just go to their fridge? Oh, I hadn't thought of that, okay?
It reminds me of Rush Limbaugh saying, well, if you can't afford your health care, just sell your Range Rover, duh.
Yeah, he said that he had a little condition in Hawaii, had to go to the hospital, but it wasn't a big deal because it only cost him half the price of his Range Rover. So that's the Republicans, okay, and that's this guy. Meanwhile, I've lived that life. And by the way, even if you're not, like he doesn't get any part of it. Like, so was I technically hungry all the time when I was dirt poor? No, but why was I not hungry? Because I meticulously planned out how much I could get out of, how many meals I can get out of a box of cereal. And I could get it down to under $1 per meal, right? But just because you're eating honeycomb 6 meals in a row and you're not technically hungry doesn't mean that you're living in the lap of luxury and you couldn't use a lunch for your kids. And it's one thing when I was poor and I was single. It's a very different thing when you're poor and you got kids.
Totally agree. And look, one of my concerns about where this country is headed is other countries are beating us because we are not investing in the future of the country. Investing in the future of the country means investing in education. And believe it or not, school lunches are part of those investments because if the kids are full, they're not hungry, their stomachs aren't growling, they're able to focus on their lessons, they're able to focus in school. They're able to learn better. So it's not just it's not just an investment in giving people free lunches for the hell of it, right? First of all, it's the right thing to do. I believe it's the moral thing to do. But also, if you don't buy into that at all and you don't really care about the morality around it, it's also a really good investment for the country's future to make sure these kids are ready to learn and are absorbing their lessons. That's it. That's all it is. It's that simple. Now, I do have more details for you. So despite some Republicans complaining about this, Democrats in the state pushed the universal program through with some help from the other side of the aisle. So I also want to give them credit where credit is due. So the Minnesota House, led by Democratic Farmer Labor, the Farmer Labor Party, the state's Democratic affiliate, first passed the bill in February in a 70 to 58 party line vote. The state Senate, where the DFL holds just a single seat advantage, approved it in March by a 38 to 26 margin. So they got help. I didn't even know that they had this party in Minnesota. But
yeah, that's the main party for the Democrats in Minnesota. It's a fun little leftover fact from back when we had more parties. And I like that its name is so pro-labor and it wins. And so
yeah. Guess what? The largest, most intersectional group in the country, workers. It's simple.
Okay, now let's get to Tim Walz's other proposal because that's what's going to lead to my prediction.
Okay, so yesterday Tim Walz announced that 2.1 million Minnesota residents have already gotten or will get tax rebates either by check or directly to their bank accounts. Cold hard cash. So the rebates, adding up to about $1 billion, are part of legislation signed by Democratic Governor Tim Walz in May to return a portion of a projected $17.6 billion budget surplus to taxpayers. The legislation signed by the governor in May provides payments to eligible Minnesotans of $520 for married couples filing a joint 2021 income or property tax return with adjusted gross income of $150,000 or less, $260 for all other individuals with 2021 adjusted gross income of $75,000 or less, and another $260 for each dependent up to 3 dependents. And taxpayers with incomes above those caps will not receive a rebate.
Yes. All right, now here comes the prediction finally. Governor Tim Walz will soon be the most popular governor in the country.
That's your prediction?
Yeah. So now I checked in case he was already number 2 and this was kind of cheating, right? He isn't. He isn't in the top 10 and I don't think he's in the top 20. He's at 52%, which is respectable, but he's not anywhere near the top. And he's in a purple state, which makes it very difficult because if you're in a deep red or a deep blue state, you're more likely to be popular in that state because you've got more of your own voters in that state. But nonetheless, I'm predicting it that he's gonna go to number 1. Why? Because I don't think politics is that complicated at all. I think you deliver for your voters and they love you. You don't deliver for your voters and they don't like you. Oh, Cenk, that's not sophisticated, really? So we've seen this movie 1,000 times. When Joe Biden did the first COVID relief bill, it was loaded with over nearly about $2 trillion in things that were for the average American, including the child tax credit, and they loved it. And he was polling 15 to 20 points higher than he is today. And after that first bill, they cut off all the benefits after the first year and has given almost nothing to the American people since then, and poll numbers dive. Boy, this is so complicated. Sarah Palin used to be the most popular governor in the country by a landslide.
Why was that?
She was at 80% in Alaska.
Wow, what did she do?
Because she said, hey, you know what, that oil under Alaska that Exxon and all those other companies keep taking, it's actually our oil, so I'm going to make them give checks to every citizen of Alaska for the oil that they're taking out.
And Alaskans like that?
Well, they love that.
Surprising.
And you know what that is, by the way? Socialism, okay? Because it is the people's oil. It is not ExxonMobil or Chevron's oil. It's the people of Alaska's. And so there's no reason in the world, by the way, as Obama and Biden and Trump, they all bragged about, oh, we're producing the most oil, oh, I love it. Did you guys get a check?
No.
No, you didn't get a check at all, right?
Yeah.
No, they let all those companies keep all that money because they all get paid off by those companies. Yes, your beloved Obama and Biden, as well as terrible Donald Trump.
There is a downside to it though. And I'm being serious, I'm not being facetious. I can never say
Facetious.
that. Facetious. Look, if ordinary people are benefiting from drilling for fossil fuels, they might want to continue drilling for fossil fuels.
No, I hear you. So that,
you know what I'm saying?
No, I get it, and I'm not debating the relative, value of that particular piece of legislation. I'm just telling you that politics is actually very straightforward. So this brother's going to give back $1,300 per person for everybody making under $150,000 because they had a surplus. They're going to love him for it. The free lunches, they're going to love him for it. Yeah. And it didn't. And where's he getting this money? One was a surplus, and the other is by taxing the super rich. And guess what? 99% of people aren't super rich, so they're not going to feel that tax at all. And all they're going to see is the benefits. That's called serving your voters. And by the way, the Republicans will be livid about it. Every time you serve the voters, they're like, oh, you're just trying to buy voters. Well, who are you buying? You give away trillions in tax cuts to the rich, who are your donors. So Republicans buy their donors, and the Democrats very rarely, by the way, but every once in a while will buy voters. But that's what you're supposed to do in a democracy, okay? You're supposed to deliver for the average guy. So by the way, Sarah Palin was right, even though she's a Republican, when she did it in Alaska.
Right.
And Tim Walz is right, when he's a Democrat, when he does it in Minnesota.
I'm just curious to see how Republican voters, like obviously when we say Republicans in this context, we're talking about the politicians in the state who are against these programs.
Yes.
But I am curious to see how this might shift the thinking and the political views of the Republican voters in Minnesota, of which, by the way, many Republican voters.
See, this is why I wish we had more money, because I do a poll in Minnesota and I would get you that answer.
Yeah,
right?
I'm very curious about that.
Because I guarantee you that his popularity among actual Republican voters will go up significantly after this.
Yeah.
Because they're not the same as the politicians. The voters, we might disagree with the Republican voters on a whole heap of stuff, including culture war issues, right? But the voters are normal human beings. They're not donors. They're not, they're not going to be mad that they got $1,300 when it was their money in the first place. It was a surplus of taxes they had taken from them earlier. Of course they're going to be thrilled, and Republicans might be the most thrilled. They're getting tax money back, right? Not complicated. By the way, he might get so popular if Biden drops out, I might back this guy. Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.